Today, I am joined by David Lewis, the team leader of TLG and Rise, who has focused his career from agent to team leader to executive leadership today. He helps develop agents into confident producers and future leaders. And in this conversation, we dive right into what truly separates an average agent to an elite agent and the mindset shift required to make it in today's market, and the secret sauce behind his success. If you're an agent thinking about building a team or a leader looking to scale, this conversation will give you a lot to think about. So let's dive right into it. How do entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and experts like you scale a massive business all while having fun and impacting lives? Welcome to the Play Bigger podcast. I'm your host, Raquel Quinet, business coach, real estate entrepreneur, investor, wife, and sports mom. This podcast will give you real quick tips, strategies, tools, and inspire you to play bigger in business and in life. Are you ready? Let's grow to the next level. Welcome to the Play Bigger podcast. This show is for entrepreneurs who want to play bigger in business and in life. And today I have a very special guest who I have actually known for a really long time, maybe a decade. And he is the leader of TLG, Rise. He's also a consultant. He's done so many things in the business. And you all know, if you're listening to this or watching on YouTube, you all know that I love bringing special people that are actually doing the thing in real estate. And it's not theory, it's actual experience. So I can't wait to have this conversation. Welcome to the show, David Lewis.
What's up? Thank you for having me. It's good to be back. We did this 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And I heard it was the best one you've ever done. I don't know what. Let's see if we can run it back now.
And then I went on your podcast.
Yeah, best one I've ever done, right? So we have to keep the streak going.
The best of the best, right?
That's right, the best of the best.
And
Only
he
up
also
from here.
owns a boxing gym, so it's really like the best. Like, we're just gonna box this thing out.
That's right. That's right.
About that too. Like, you're also an investor. You also own a boxing gym. So all the things in which it makes him so unique. So I want to dive right into it. So tell us, where do you spend most of your time? You're the leader of a real estate team. You've been a leader for a really long time, right? A consultant, a box gym owner, where do you spend? How do you organize your time having so many different focuses?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting enough. I've learned a lot over the past couple of years because, I always thought that I had this ability to have the highest threshold possible, that I was like, dude, you can't maximize, I can get so much more done in the day. And over the past couple of years, I think I've kind of hit that threshold, and I've kind of had to make really big decisions on opportunity cost and staying in my lane. And you mentioned the overall 90% of what I do is real estate related. I'm an owner of a title company. I run one of the bigger real estate teams over at LPT and the Rise Realty Group. We're in Atlanta, Georgia, Dallas, Texas, San Antonio, and Austin. And then I have my Catalyst Movement training company, which you got to speak on my podcast, which was amazing. To call it a podcast really isn't fair. It's more of just an interview series because, like you, I like to bring on people who are the best and the brightest and pick their brain, because I realized I just have all these friends that don't all know each other and they're all brilliant. And it was the easiest way for me to get their brilliance out there and help them promote the things that they want to promote. And then, I have my consultant role with LPT and helping them grow, being around in the beginning as one of the founding executives, and then leaving and coming back, seeing that ship grow and be so amazing and to be the fastest growing brokerage in history. And then we talked about the boxing gyms. I own a couple of locations of Rumble Boxing, which is, we have one in West Midtown Atlanta, and then we have one in Sandy Springs, and it's a group fitness boxing studio, which allows me to kind of lean into that thing that I've been so passionate about for the past decade, which is actual boxing and, learning and all of that stuff. And it's such an interesting discipline. So within all of that, let's talk about the threshold thing, because that's the thing I've kind of learned and realized over the past couple of years, is that you can hit threshold and you can get too busy, and there is a true opportunity cost to getting out of your lane and not staying in the thing that you're the best at. And what I've realized over that time is that I think the reason I was able to do so much for so long was because it was all real estate adjacent. Like, meaning that in the real estate space, which is something, I've lived in as an agent for the past decade and running a team, it was really easy to transfer that to coaching and training and consulting around real estate, or moving up to the executive level of a brokerage and helping to understand, for my time at KWRI and with Gary and like my time at LPT, like it was all kind of the same. You know what I mean? It wasn't until I stepped out to a separate franchise model when it came to boxing and trying to learn that, which boxing is fine as like a training, but actually getting into the space of the business, man, I got way over my skis. And I realized that in doing that, I was kind of taking away from my real estate side of things. We know this, and we've heard it 1,000 times, that the highest return on your time is to take a real estate listing, right? To take a listing. That's the easiest thing and the highest value for your time that we can do. And when you move into other things, like sometimes you're trading that activity for something which has a much lower return.
Right.
So I've learned a lot of lessons in that. I love the boxing studios, like they're going really well, but I've learned a lot of lessons. So not to go too far down that path, but threshold has been like something that I've really, really been focusing on lately, because man, for the first time ever, I feel like every time I take a left and I should have taken a right, like it's costing me more than it used to.
Yeah, I would call it your capacity, right? Like your threshold.
Yeah.
And so what do you think, given your background, what do you think separates a good, let's say, business owner, team owner, or like of a high producing organization versus the average?
I think people that really are leaders that really, really know what they're good at. Gary Keller said something a long time ago that I thought was really great. And he said that because someone had asked a question and they were saying that, well, someone in my organization, they just don't agree with my leadership style. And he was like, well, they got to go. And, I think there's a lot of truth in that, meaning that like the one constant in my entire journey in real estate has been me. Meaning that like I had to really understand who I was and own who I was to know what opportunities I should pursue and how I should build the business around me and my personality. And it doesn't mean like I got a pass for being a jerk, right? Because like we know, like I've always said it, like my biggest weakness is communication. So I've really struggled, and I've really like studied to learn how to be the most effective communicator I can be. But that was my biggest problem. So I didn't just lean into that and go, well, they just have to deal with me being a jerk, because I don't intend to be a jerk. But once I realized that, I was able to put people around me whose tolerance for directness was a little bit higher, and I was able to pick opportunities where like people's tolerance for directness was a little bit higher, meaning that it didn't get in my way. And so, long-winded answer to your question, I think people that realize, number one, what their strengths and what their weaknesses are, attack their weaknesses and lean into their strengths, like that's the most effective leader. Because like I said, as Gary brilliantly put it, they got to go because you're the constant, meaning that you have to build your opportunities in the people around you based on who you are, because David's not going anywhere.
Correct. I love how you put that, because it's so true that if you're going to build a business, and even though there's like job roles, characteristics, the DISC, at the end of the day, if you're the CEO, and you're going to stay in it for a while, and you're not going to obviously like sell your business or anything like that, you're the constant, right? And so moving and saying what you just said is, what is it besides high tolerance? Like, how do you look for talent? I'm sure with the world that you have today, you've got people around you. What's something that you look for, whether it's let's start with agents. What do you look for? You've got a real estate team. What do you look for an agent today?
Today it's hustle. Like in today's market specifically, like over the past several years, that like it's been a dogfight. So if someone's not willing to work, and like people will blame it on generational things, and like the younger kids don't want to work. There's just as many lazy old people as there are young people. So for me, like if you lack hustle and you're not willing to go out there and do the things required, because like real estate's awesome, because like you and I, we can mathematically tell you with all 100% certainty that if you do this number of activities, I can tell you what your results will be, right? Like we have enough data out there on like cold calling, and we have enough data out there on door knocking. We have enough data out there that exists to go, look, if someone's like, I want to make $100,000. I'm like, great. So mathematically saying you need to go knock on 1,000 doors. When are you going to get started? And if they're not willing to knock on 1,000 doors, or if they're not willing to knock on 5 doors to pursue that goal, like they're just not the person who's going to survive in this market. Like hopefully the market turns back around and we get some of those years like we had where if you had a pulse and half a brain, like you could sell a couple houses, but that's not today's market. Like only the strong survive. So hustle's number one. And the second is connectivity, like your level to connect with people, meaning that you can either outwork your way to success or you just have to be the most connected person. Like you've got to be willing to go out there and shake hands, and even that's not really enough in these days. So like it's hustle number one, and then like someone who's just knows everybody and is making connections, and like that would be number two. Those are the biggest separators for me.
What would be the first 3 things you'd focus on, or that you have focused on, that has allowed you to go from an agent to a team owner to now like all of this? You've actually taken a real estate business not only to grow but actually to scale, and you advise people. I mean, you're a consultant at an executive level. What would you say if you were to boil it down to 3 things of what makes businesses scale today?
So my journey has always been knowing that today I'm not good enough to be where I want to be. I've shared this story maybe even on most popular podcast you ever did before when we interviewed. I talked about like I got to meet this high level person a long time ago in real estate. His name's Ben Kinney, and we had the worst conversation ever because I was a brand new agent and he was like expanding into Europe. And I realized that there's levels of success, and I didn't speak his language of success at the time. So I began this pursuit of finding people who spoke a higher language of success than I had. And that led me, it's how I met you. It's how I met people like along the ways. And like that pursuit of a higher level of conversation and knowledge, that changes everything for everybody. So for me, you know, I built a real estate team, but I set out to build a real estate team, but like I started to do and adopt the habits of people who had a 20-person team or a 30-person team, and people that were making millions in real estate, because I was surrounding myself with those people, sneaking into the rooms that they are in. That way I could learn from them. And when you hang out with killers, like you start to adapt killer habits. And like even not even thinking about it, right? Like the things that they think are important, you now think are important, and it just shrinks your learning curve so much. Yeah. So if you're wanting to do more and you want to evolve, I've always said like I've had a wild career in real estate for someone who's marginally good at selling houses. Yeah. You know, and it's that pursuit that has really kind of like led me to those conversations. And because if you kick it with people, they're willing to share. You know, like I forced myself into meeting you. Like you didn't wake up one day and go, hey, I need to meet this David Lewis guy. Like I cold messaged you. I had 2 other people cold message the person we were in business with at the time, because I was like, I want to meet them. And, you know, I found that someone who doesn't know you, if they hear your name 4 or 5 times, when you actually walk up to them and introduce yourself, it's like, dude, why do I know who you are? You know, it's all purposeful.
Yeah, it's intentional networking. Right? Intentional prospecting is what we call it. Now, I want to ask you this, is that there's so many people that try to grow businesses, try to scale real estate teams, businesses, or even their own business. What do you think people misunderstand? Because there's not a lot, if you really look at it. We've been at this game for a really long time. Like, there's not a lot that have actually successfully expanded or scaled or really grew, very profitable. So what do you think people misunderstand when it comes specifically to scaling a real estate business?
Flexibility is important. This is something I've learned from like a lot from Robert Palmer, who's like the CEO and founder over at LPT. And one of the, honestly, I've never met anyone, and I've been lucky to meet some pretty brilliant people, like, but I've never met anyone that sees the future in the field like he does. And I learned that flexibility is really, really important, because you can't go all in on one thing. And where this really shows up a lot of times for real estate team owners or real estate business owners is they go all in on themselves. right? Their face, their name, their style of business, right? Like, oh, I only, we're a boiler room style cold calling machine. Great. That works until a law changes and you can't just cold call people, right? Or, oh man, we're all in on Zillow leads. Great. That is great until Zillow takes away your leads. Like, you have to build for flexibility, because one thing that we know in the history of the real estate market, it goes up and it goes down. And the way that the market and the dynamics are changing today, like, how could you not be flexible, right? Meaning that, like, I've watched so many, and this is on a brokerage level and even on like a team level, people invest all this money in technology only for AI 6 months later to make it absolutely obsolete. And that's important, right? Like, you've watched these models, like you look at these, we call it the traditional brokerage models. Like, you look at a Remax, you look at a Keller Williams, you look at a Century 21, and they went all in on a rigid model, and it was fine for a long time. And it was very, very good. And it made a lot of money until the market evolved past that. Now, they didn't do anything wrong. The only thing they did wrong was lock themselves in a thing that they can't evolve and change, because they don't have that flexibility, which is why you have these single entity brokerages or cloud-based models now that are built in flexibility, that are able to kind of like weather the storm of a changing market and a changing dynamic. And you have to build everything from a real estate team to your own individual business with that level of flexibility, because one thing we know for sure is the market's going to change.
Yep. I think and speaking of change, right, with fewer transactions happening and it'll be fewer, they predict, this year. Where do you think people, if an agent's listening to this, where should they focus on to go get more business today?
It's either, going back to what I said earlier, number one, it's effort based. If you have 1,000 real estate conversations a week, you're going to make $1 million in real estate. Like that.
Door knocking, open houses. What would you recommend?
You start with people that know and love you. So like the sphere, right? But then, like, you can only have so many conversations with people that know you and like you. So you have to go talk to strangers, right? So the door knocking, I always, like, when I first started, I was so determined to win and hit my goals, because number one, I had like a young family, and I walked into a Keller Williams office and some guy was like, "Hey, you should quit your job. It only works if you're a full-time agent." And I was like, in hindsight, I'm like, why did I listen to this guy? Because I know the guy, and I'm like, this is not the dude that should be giving me career advice, right? But I was like, okay, I guess I should quit. And I set like a 4-month timeline for me, only nights and weekends. And I held the worst open houses for people. Like, so I would get in the office early and we're set up, because they had these free desks in the office. And I would like sit at the free desk. I started hanging stuff on the wall around my free desk so other people wouldn't take it, just because I knew that they didn't know that it wasn't mine. But it was around all the killers, like all the biggest teams in the office. And I would walk into each one every day and go, "Hey, what's your worst open house I can hold open this weekend?" I'd hold 3 or 4 open houses a weekend, and I would door knock around all of them. Like, I literally wore holes in like my leather dress shoes from door knocking so much. And these were garbage open houses. I mean, these are teams of 5 or 6 people. So I was getting their 7th worst open house, the one that definitely was haunted, the one that definitely like was on its 12th price reduction. But the door knocking around that and holding those open houses, like, it's got to be effort based. You have to drive effort into those conversations, because that's the only way that you can engineer that level of conversations, like in a market like this.
Why do you think people start off that way, doing 3 to 4 open houses, and then consistency I see with real estate agents is really difficult in this business? Why do you think people stop doing what actually worked?
So there's 2 reasons. Number one, like, it sucks, right? Like, meaning that like it's hot when you're door knocking, or it's raining when you're door knocking. And I don't know if anyone who's listening or watching this is aware, but when you knock on a stranger's door, they're not always the nicest to you. It sucks by nature, right? Cold calling is tough by nature. Holding open houses, when you're holding the 7th worst open house, that's been on the market for 7 weeks, like, you sit by yourself a lot of times in those open houses. So that's number one. My favorite John Maxwell quote, all worthwhile things are uphill, meaning that like it's an uphill walk. Like, what do we know about it walking uphill? It sucks, right? Like, it's tough. Every step is harder. The second piece is our industry is built on delayed gratification. there is no instant gratification. Like your efforts today pay off. It used to be they paid off 30 or 60 days from now, but in today's market, they're paying off 90 to 120 days from now. And it's hard for people to mentally connect like, oh, I'm having a good month. They equate it with doing real estate related activities that they're doing that month. It's not. It's what you did 30, 60, 90, 120 days ago. And it's not only hard for most people, it's like an impossible human thing sometimes to connect those two things, because we're built, especially in today's world with technology, like we're so built for instant gratification that real estate's one of those weird frontiers, like where like number one, you can still get giant paychecks and it's awesome, right? But second to that is like efforts are paid off months and months after you do it.
Yeah, speaking of like technology and like how the business obviously has evolved. I remember there was no social media back then, and now you've got, and I know you gave me slack for it. I'm like, you've got to build a brand, right? And if you look at some of the biggest founder-led companies, they are brand-based, right?
Yeah.
And so, and then you've got AI now. Where do you see real estate evolving as far as like doing business, how agents are generating leads, and what do you see in the future?
I did give you slack for it because like I still don't personally believe that anyone has sold a lot of homes off of TikTok, but I will take that to my grave, right? I'm sure there's someone out there that's done it.
I don't know about TikTok, but I can tell you that we have $1 million agents today that sell it purely off of social media.
I know. It's a thing, right? And that, but the people that do it right, like, and this is the problem I have with the whole social media thing, is that people use it as an excuse to not do the other thing. Like a new agent was like, I really got to work on my social media. I'm like, no, you need to door knock and you need to hold open houses. Your social media doesn't matter. You don't have a brand. You've never sold a house, right? But what, to answer your question, like the evolution is like these major brands, like you know Michael Perna out of Michigan. Yeah, great guy. He spends hours and hours and hours on purposeful social media brand cultivation, and it shows, right? Like in what he does. So what you're seeing is these this evolution where it used to be like people would hire a brokerage or hire a brokerage brand, but you're seeing these mega brands emerge across the country. If you look at like a Kenny Fast or you look at like a Michael Perna, and they're social and they're actually based out of the
right. He's a media company today, pretty
much. Right. Yeah, so you see these things that are happening, and you see these people that are building these mega brands and mega businesses, and they're honestly their brands are becoming a lot bigger than the brokerages that house them. And I think that's the future. I think you're going to see these mega teams pop up, and now that you've got you've gotten rid of that rigidness of the traditional brokerage model, meaning that like I can only be in this building here, and I have to get 1,000 permissions to be in this building over here, right? In our world of the single entity brokerage, like you can pop up all over the country, and that's how social media works, meaning that like you can get influence all over the country. It's not as siloed. Doesn't mean that print marketing and all of that stuff doesn't work. It still really works, like hyper local marketing. But the best of the best in these brand builders all started hyper local, right? Like your Ken Pozak, like he hyper local to Orlando, right? And well, I mean, I guess Orlando abroad, but it's business coming into Orlando, right? Perna in Detroit and all of these things, like, but then their ability, because then people know them, and then the ability to expand because the brand has gotten so big with no restrictive like locality boundaries, like it's wild. I think that's the future.
That basically has social media, but there's so much referrals from agents that they get $250,000 just agent to agent referrals.
Yeah.
And it's all because of brand, really.
Yeah.
They could be everywhere, but somehow they pop in their feeds every day that they're like, oh, let me send it to so-and-so.
Yeah. I still stand by it. If you've sold less than 25 homes, you do not need to worry about your social media, right? Put it there, talk on it. It's fine, but it's not going to be the key to your success. But once you start to gain momentum, and once you start to actually brand yourself, like, and you have a brand and you have a business, the evolution of that becomes really, really crucial and important.
I think consumers now are not only looking at Zillow or their website, the first thing they'll do is they'll pull their names and like they'll look at how they market themselves. I mean, I'm in Scottsdale, so it's luxury. So the first thing I think most sellers will do is like, what do they have on their social and how do they actually market themselves?
Yeah.
Before we would have to go and do a presentation. I think access to information today, especially with ChatGPT, is like at the click in seconds for consumers today, right? So I just think it's such an interesting topic of where do we see real estate going in the future of how people are building their business.
Yeah, and there's this evolution too where like, and I don't think this is talked about enough, is that like we are in the age of the most educated consumer ever. Meaning that like in the history of real estate, it used to be like, I need to buy a house. I have no idea what homes are available. I'm going to drive to this building and David's going to walk out with a giant book of available homes. And like, that's my gateway, right? Now, like through these major, and this is a dangerous rabbit hole, but like through these major like listing hubs that people use, right? Like your Zillows, people understand. I often have buyers, because I'm still in the trenches, I'm still doing some transactions. Agents on my team, like they often have buyers that know more about the property than I even have access to on my MLS. Like they'll walk in going, yeah, well, this was listed and it was taken off the market. And you're like, how do you know that, right? We're doing 12 houses today. There's so much information. And that doesn't just go for the homes. Like your consumers are more educated on like what's available on the lending side of things. They're more educated on like what's available in your branding and like what you said on social media 3 weeks ago. Everything is so accessible that your brand starts with you. Meaning that like you really got to like lock up your stuff first. Meaning before you're out there doing TikToks and stuff, like you should also take a look at like what comments you're making and the political arguments you're getting on social media, because like nothing exists in a vacuum anymore. Nothing is safe. Everyone has access to it. It's the most educated consumer, and that's really shaping the market. Like if you look at this big argument between Compass and Zillow and like all of these things that are happening, it's on mindshare ownership of the educated consumer, right? And that didn't matter before. And like, but there's so many facets to that educated consumer that people aren't paying attention to. And ChatGPT and like all of the AI is just fueling that. Like literally before they would do their research, and Zillow made it easier. Now they're literally just typing in an address in ChatGPT and they're getting all the information.
Yeah, you can get comps and everything today.
Yeah.
I mean, I always tell agents that if it's not in your listing consultation, that you guys have a page of talking about AI and the advice of AI. Like it's almost, it would almost shock me if you didn't use ChatGPT during our transactions. But before you use it, let's make this promise now that not everything that comes back is actually local. And
right.
It is actually accurate. No different than Zillow's estimates back in the days and even still today, right? So let's just have a conversation about it. But at least you're upfront because you know that at the end of the day, your consumer, your buyer, your seller, your client is going to ask ChatGPT. I mean,
right.
We do it with doctors. We do it with everything today. So why wouldn't we do it with a real estate agent, right?
Yeah.
So if an agent is feeling like they're stuck or a team leader has hit a plateau, what advice would you give to them?
Go back to looking at why you got in the first place, and then look at who you are. Meaning that like most people that are stuck are like me and have either gotten over their skis on like spending too much time in arenas that they shouldn't be, or they've gotten over their skis in the sense of ego. Like go back and take an actual look at who you are. Meaning like, who am I today? Like, what are the skills that I have? What are my weaknesses? And does my business reflect that? Yeah. And a lot of times that really clears things up in two facets, right? The first facet, it's going to give you some clarity on like decisions that you should make in the future. But second, it's going to really help you understand if you are playing someone else's game. Because a lot of times we start playing other people's games and we just don't realize it. Like all of a sudden, like you're making decisions. Like I hear so many people like make business decisions based on affiliation or based on like group think. And you're like, that's not the way it works. Right? Like now, like we're all independent business owners and and before there was literally a book that was written that said there's one way to build a real estate team. And it's the only way to build a real estate team.
Not anymore.
there's 1,000 ways to do this, and you can do it based on who you are and who you want to be, right? Like if I told you I am super direct and I struggle with communication, and I found myself advertising myself as the leader that's going to cry with you, like on your shoulder or whatever. Like I'm the guy that's going to be sympathetic to you not showing up to work. Like it's just never going to work, right? And you don't have to now, right? Like there's different levels and there's different cost structures, and like it's amazing. So I would, number one, if you're feeling stuck, take a look at who you are, see if you are feeling still good about your business being in alignment with you, and then start taking steps to make it that way.
Yeah.
Because most of us struggle because we're in conflict with who we know that we are and then what we're actually doing.
Yeah, it's your identity check, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes as you evolve, that changes. And so sometimes it's no longer aligned to the business that you want. So, David, as we wrap up, what are you most excited about?
Man, like, I'm really excited about this next year. Like we mentioned that me doing the consultant work and like working in LPT, and it's really cool to see a brokerage that like, I mean, we can talk about it. Like I showed you a pitch deck years ago on, and it was a thing.
I saw LPT from the beginning of the beginning, I feel like.
Oh, before the beginning, we didn't have a name. Like it was like, hey, here's this brokerage that we want to build, and then now it's this thing.
So yeah, it might have not even been named LPT at the time.
No, yeah,
I can tell you it was yellow and black.
it was yellow and black, right? And now it's evolved to this thing, which is mostly blue. That's like become the fastest growing brokerage in history. We're heading into an IPO in the near future. Like it's just really cool to see that. So I'm really excited about LPT's continued growth and being able to kind of like get a good view of that. I'm really excited about what we're doing at Rise. To have this, to run a team for the first time ever in the single entity space where all the rules are off and the geographic restrictions are like gone. We're really impacting agent lives at a pretty high level, which is cool because we're giving them the things that we're good at and we're not charging them for the things that like we're not good at. And like, that's been a really good marriage. And outside of that, we've got this thing called the Catalyst Movement, which is this training podcast and interview series. And we just released it yesterday, but Dan Roshan, who wrote this book, Teach to Sell, and it's just about creating the habits. He has this phrase, no broke months, and it's creating the habits of sales to make sure that you never get in the ebbs and flows of what real estate can be in any sales industry. That's the thing that pumps me up, man. Like I've got so many good friends and I've got so many people that are brilliant, like you coming on there and just dropping like bomb after bomb of like brilliance. Like that is the thing that I love the most. What I'm doing right now is like getting to highlight my friends and making sure that they're getting the love and to promote the things that they do, because man, like that's so rewarding. It's really cool. So out of all those things, I'm just generally pretty excited. There's so much cool stuff, and it's crazy that there's so much cool stuff happening in what's called a down market, right?
Yeah. It's interesting because as you were talking, I think as you've been in the industry so long, and I think I've been in it for almost over 2 decades now, I think what you were saying is what it ultimately comes down to is like the relationships that you create in this business will always be your biggest flex, right?
Yeah.
I mean, no matter where you go off, we've seen each other go and do different paths, but at the end of the day, we all, like, there's several of us and we all know each other that still stay connected and go like, what's next? Regardless of brands, regardless of like what everybody's doing, but it's always good to like have insight to some of the smartest people on the planet. So
yeah, there's no problem that hustle will not fix. And there's also no problem that having a better group of friends will not fix. Who you surround yourself with matters, right? So one of those two things is everybody's problem.
Yeah.
You're either not working hard enough or you don't kick it with the right people.
Yeah. And you definitely don't want to burn bridges and burn relationships, right? Yeah,
I'm going to send that message to young David. Like if I look at like most of my regrets over my journey, it's been burned bridges. I'm pretty glad still that I burned, but there's a few back that like I definitely regret, because you never know. You never know how that person is going to, like, you're like, no, I'm never going to see this person again. You're like, oh man, I need to go apply for a job with this person. This is going to be interesting.
Yeah. And it's so interesting too, because as you were talking about relationships, I was evaluating some relationships, and sometimes you can actually look at the history of some of your, like if you look back at your trajectory, sometimes there was certain people that believed in you, that put you in certain rooms, and your future actually changed. Your trajectory changed. And so you always want to hold close to those people, because you just never know. Like you said, you might be applying for a job and who knows. I tell Bryce and Brooks and all that all the time. Like, you be connected, stay connected, and, you know, keep those relationships. As we wrap up, there's a common question that I always ask every single person that comes on the show is, what are you doing right now to play bigger in business or in life?
I think I've spent, yeah, so I think I've spent 10 years building antiquated term of like a great Rolodex. I talked about the Catalyst movement, the interview series, and all of that stuff. I think for the first time over the past year, I've been really leaning into that Rolodex, which means I'm revisiting relationships. I'm letting people tell their story and like share their strengths. And like, that's been really powerful because it's like reinvigorating a lot of those relationships that I had, but also going back and like celebrating like all of that networking I did previously, you know? So I think it's to your point that who you surround yourself with matters. And like, you always got, you know, when they come back, but it's also important to purposefully revisit, to check back in and find out, okay, great. Like, what are you doing now? Because if somebody was a mover and a thinker like 7 years ago, they didn't stop. And sometimes you'll find them in like a crazy different seat that you weren't aware of. And like, that's how you open up like lots and lots of opportunities, whether it be on like the recruiting and like the brokerage growth side of things, or whether it be on like the personal professional development side of things. It's just, opportunity comes from having powerful conversations with powerful people. And for me, it's revisiting those relationships has kind of been my focus over the past, you know, year or so.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, David, I want to say thank you so much for being on our show. I always love our time together because I get to kind of hear what you're up to and kind of see your brain and where you think the industry will go. And I can't wait to see you continue to do cool things and obviously play bigger.
Yeah, I think we just recorded your second greatest podcast ever. So I'm excited. I'm excited for everyone to check it out.
That's awesome.